and welcome to a very special night here at the Dread Broadcast. I'm Tim, and if you've been following our roundtable lately, you know we've been making some big changes to how we deliver the horror news and creator insight you've come to expect. Tonight marks the official debut of our new segment, Under the Knife. We decided that our interviews and creator spotlights deserve their own room to breathe. Instead of tucking these conversations between the headlines and trailers, we are separating them into their own dedicated space to give the creators and the craft the spotlight they deserve. Whether it's a director, an author, or an artist, Under the Knife is where we peel back the skin of the industry and look at what makes it tick. Joining us on the panel tonight, we have Sheree from A Nightmare on Fierce Street.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Excited to have you. Welcome. We have Vince from Dread Alert Media making his return.
I'm pumped to be back.
Glad to have you. We have Jerry and Rich, familiars of the show from the Horror Heads
What's
podcast.
up?
Hey. And Matthew from Horror Madness on Instagram. Matthew, welcome back.
Glad to be back, guys. Thank you.
But tonight, the Surgeon's Mask belongs to our first featured guest. He's been a theater major, a cop, a technical advisor, a writer, and a director. He knows the industry from the street level to the executive suite, and he's here to give us a class titled Anatomy of an Indie Film. Without further ado, I'm turning the floor over to the man himself, Morley Nelson. Morley, it's all yours.
Being here. I don't. So I have a quick question, technical question. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can see you.
Because I can't see myself, so I'm just like, how's my hair? I'm kidding. So anyhow, yeah. So thank you for doing this. I appreciate. I'm flattered to be the first one on Under the Knife. But I've been getting a lot of people reaching out and asking me writing questions and filmmaking questions and production questions, and I thought, what better place to do to answer a lot of those questions and to give back to the community? What better place than the Dread broadcast to do that? So thank you again for hosting this.
Thank you. Honored.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So I'll just do a quick, you did a great background on me, but and I also don't know, did you guys hear when you're introducing yourselves? I was going,
I have a button. I could have been playing audio claps on here, but I forget.
oh, come on. Yeah, giving me a chance to do my work on my voiceover skills, so and sound design. But anyhow, okay, so I am Morley Nelson. I'm a writer, director, actor of the film Uncontained. It's we had a $55,000 budget, very small budget, and as of November of last year, we've made 1.5 million. So that's the last reporting numbers that I have. I don't know where we're at today. And that being said, I started off as a theater major, spent some time as a cop. The first feature I worked on was a $40 million feature, M. Night Shyamalan movie. Where as a technical advisor, I helped the main characters who were playing police detectives understand the kind of emotional bridging in their roles and the emotional background and everything that they carried with those roles. And then from there, I did I think it was about $100 million feature where they threw me into technical directing, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And that movie was Red with Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman and a bunch of other actors. And then from there, I was fortunate enough to get continual gigs, either advising or directing on film and television. And so I think the biggest production that I've assisted in directing was 11/22/63. It's based on a Stephen King book. It's on Hulu, but it's a Bad Robot production. And then from there, I got the best advice, and the advice I would give everyone listening is go ahead and make your movie, because no one's going to discover you. No one is going to hire you or option a script or pay money. That's a thing from 20 years ago. There's no more development money. There's no more. It's so competitive in LA, in the world for that matter. You got to shoot your shot. And so that's what we did. I scraped together a bunch of some money from one investor, It was equity financing. We made our movie with a lot of favors and a lot of love. Found a distributor, and then that's where Uncontained is right now. So to answer a lot of like questions, the same questions that I've been getting lately, I thought I'd start off generally and then kind of get more specific. And so if anybody has any questions, please send them in. Or if you on the panel have any questions, please interrupt me at any time. I love to talk, so I need to be interrupted as much as possible. So generally, this is really basic stuff, big overview, but I think it's essential. And that's right now with all the questions about verticals and all the questions about what kind of writing you should do for film or television or whatever. There's two forms of that you should be aware of. There's two forms of participation. There's active and passive participation. So your audience is going to either actively participate in your story, and those examples are video games, right? Where you may have a storyline, say like Call of Duty, right? There is a storyline with Soap and Roach and all these characters. It's got the typical, middle or beginning, middle, and end, the kind of a 3-act breakdown. But you are engaged in that by making decisions and interacting with that story, right? And so your decisions affect kind of where the story flows. Another example of active participation is content creation. Like a lot of content that you consume on social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, you are actively participating in the sense that either you're scrolling or you're commenting or you're liking or you're messaging back and forth with the content creator themselves. So that's also a form of active participation. Now, movies and television are totally passive. And so that is the hardest form of storytelling to produce for an audience, right? Because essentially you want to connect with them on an emotional level, so much so that they are totally engaged in what they're watching, right? What your film is, and they don't have any distractions. They're so engaged, right? So you want them to kind of turn off their brain a little bit and sit back and enjoy and live vicariously through your characters and emotionally attach to them. And horror is a wonderful genre to do that in, because you generally have a character in the beginning that is immediately put in danger, and we all, at the end of the day, no matter what your affiliation is with anything in the world, we are empathetic, right? And if we weren't, we wouldn't have horror as the number one genre in the world, right? So people identify with those characters because they're afraid for them. So that's a good start. The other thing is, once you have an understanding of that's kind of the goal, right? You want to write a story or create a story that is so enveloping, you do not lose your audience. You don't want to do anything that, whether it be through bad sound, bad cinematography, bad lighting, bad acting, bad whatever. We've all seen those movies where they break you away, right? You're totally engaged, and then you're like, oh, come on, what? That doesn't. What is, right? I don't have to, I mean, I could come up with a bunch of franchises that do that. I don't know if I want to name Scream, any that might have that issue, Halloween. But there's a lot of them. There's a lot of examples of those movies where we watch them and you're like, oh, come on. Right? So that is exactly the opposite of what you want to do. You want to keep your audience engaged as much as possible. So how do you do that? The first thing I think, again, generally, you want to think of is, everyone always says, tell your truth, right? Well, that doesn't mean, and write what you know, right? That doesn't mean write what you're doing on a daily basis and not lie about it. That means, what is something that happened to you, right? Something that broke you or something that hurt you. And you want to tell that in either a metaphor or maybe just telling that straight on, but it's what you have to say. It's what do you want to tell people, right? What do you want to tell an audience? And then figure out who that audience is. I think a lot of storytellers forget that you are writing for an audience, right? That is who you are making your movie or television for, is that audience. And in fact, I would argue that is who you are acting for. Like the best actors in the world have in the back of their mind, I am acting for a specific audience. So you have to keep in mind who your audience is. It can't be everybody, right? It can't even be all horror fans, You have to be specific to the subgenre of horror that you want to write for. Is it a slasher? Is it a zombie film? Is it, a creature feature? Be specific to that audience, because if you try and please everybody, you won't please anybody, right? And so have something to say. What is it about your life that you want to tell people and share? And usually, I would argue the best stories, the best film, the best television are ones that are extremely intimate, right? That you want to bear, and you may be scared to do it, but it's also, I would argue, is extremely cathartic if you do with film and television. So I'll go back to Uncontained. If you haven't seen it, please do, because I'm just going to reference it. And if you haven't seen it, it's your fault. So I'm kidding. If you want to pay me back for this free seminar where I'm not selling any products, you could go watch Uncontained on Prime or Tubi, and I would really appreciate that. And if you do want to buy products, please let me. I'm kidding. But for Uncontained, I had something to say about the way I feel kind of my experiences in life have led me. And so it is a giant metaphor for my life, but also I have this heart condition. And so the moral questions that I ask in Uncontained all kind of relate to a moment in time where I was told, you don't have that long to live. And, thank God, I was going to the Mayo Clinic at the time, and I had these two great doctors, Dr. Kane and Dr. Borlaug, and they figured everything out. And so, I'm on this medication, and they saved my life, right? That's extremely intimate. And this is the first time I've really told anybody, like a group of people, about it, right? But that is kind of what Uncontained is about, and that's what I had to say. Now, people didn't need to know my exact story, but the metaphor for the infection, for why there's changers, all came from that experience. So when I say speak your truth and speak an intimate truth, that is what you're doing, right? And if you can't get emotional about the story you're writing, you can't expect the audience that you're writing for to be emotional. You have to have moments where there are scenes, and you may not even have written them yet, but you are thinking about them, and they make you I don't know, almost tear up or angry or whatever it is, but they need to arouse an emotion in you that is painful every time you think about it, or joyous, or whatever it is. But it has to be something that is meaningful to you. Because again, if you can't articulate that on the script, your audience is never going to feel that. You have to feel it first. So I guess an example I would have is that at the end of Uncontained, where I reveal that Brooke is alive, right? And you have her at that moment in the car. I always knew that ending would be that ending, because when I thought about it, whether I was laying awake at night in bed, putting together the story in my head, or I was taking a shower, or I was on the pooper, or whatever, that no matter where I was, those moments in my head were like, okay, that gets me a little emotional. And so that's why I think that works, is because I was able to put that in the script. Being in the script, I was able to communicate that to everyone else in production on how to do it, and then we shot it and made that work. And so I would argue you need to have those moments, right? It's the same. Another example would be Forrest Gump, right? When they were writing that scene where Forrest is getting pelted with rocks by these bullies and these kids, and he's got those stupid leg devices to straighten his back, and he's just this just purely innocent kid, and he starts running, and those leg devices break off, and he runs free. That was such an emotional hero moment, right? Like if you didn't feel emotional then you're kind of dead inside a little bit, and maybe you should stick with another genre. But anyhow, I'm not saying that Forrest Gump is horror, but it's a good movie. So that's something to think about as far as when people say. I don't think if you listen to other directors, or you do masterclasses, or you listen to directors' commentary, I think for the last 20 years, you hear a lot of writers and directors say, like, oh, speak your truth, but they never kind of expand on what that means. And I think a lot of people think that means literally tell your truth. You have to tell a story that's unique and interesting, right? And it can't be, the elements that are unique have to be interesting, and the interesting elements have to also be unique, right? Like you don't want somebody to say, your film was unique and interesting. Unfortunately, what was unique was not interesting, and what was interesting was not unique. Like that's the opposite of what you want. So those are the kind of things, talking about speaking your truth, that's what you want to do. The other thing is, a lot of people ask me, what books do I need to read about writing film, right? Should I read story? Should I read Save the Cat? Should I read, Building the Future? Should I read, it's telling stories? Don't read, I would argue don't read any of those books because they're either too old, too general. I think they're written by people that, maybe wrote one or two great scripts, but I have spent way too many hours going through and reading and trying to take notes of things that are so general or don't apply, right? My advice to you is don't read any of those. If you're going to consume something that's going to help you write, be a good writer or a producer or filmmaker, whether that's a director or actor or whatever, I would say physical media, director's commentaries. Nothing is as valuable as a director's commentary on a movie that you like.
Preach.
So, yeah, I think that they're so excited to tell you what went into making that because making movies sucks. It is super fucking hard. And so they are living their catharsis through their commentary and they're spilling all the tea, right? Like this is the moment to listen to the truths that they have to say. And it's also kind of I think a lot of people don't say this, but it's also kind of an FU to all the executives, right? Because they have their moment where they get to say, get off their chest, whatever the experience that they had, that sat with them for the year since they made that movie. So director's commentaries, I feel like, are invaluable. If you can get a box set of special features, I would argue, like if you like Alien, the Alien trilogy, there's a box set you can get. They have so much behind the features elements where it can take you beyond just Ridley Scott or James Cameron's commentaries, but you can also delve deep into what goes on with the crew, what goes on with the cast, what goes into making a film. Jaws is another great one. I know these are all classics, but because they're classics, you have countless hours of behind, like experts telling you, seasoned vets telling you this is what happened on this production, and usually those are universal. So if you want to know about filmmaking in general, behind the scenes stuff.
May I cut in for the bro kids real quick?
Yeah, please.
Awesome. Yes. As a fellow broke kid, your library is your best friend. If you get that library card, you
Yes.
can check out these directors' commentaries. You can check out things where they've been interviewed. If you know interviewers and YouTubers and stuff that you like to follow, which you probably do if you're watching this, find the ones that do great interviews because when they interview a filmmaker, you're going to learn so much just from that because the filmmaker is like, this is a smaller podcast. I can be free. And they're going to tell you all kinds of things, how to make the blood, where to rent the equipment for free, libraries, all kind of things that are beneficial to you. So don't think, oh, I can't afford the box set for the 40th anniversary of this. I can't be a filmmaker. That's not an excuse. That is not an excuse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Good point. Excellent point. Let the library, so on one hand, I hate to say this because it eats into my margins, but that is the best place to go to rent television and movies, right? Is the library. And you might have to get on a waiting list for the newer stuff. But, our library we go to, and for the kids, each one gets to rent a movie, and then I rent about 20. And I'm always listening to the conversations.
Yep.
And, I'm the jerk at the library that's like, oh, why does this person renewed their, this movie 14 weeks in a row? It's like, oh, I haven't gotten to it yet, whatever. But anyway, so that's an excellent point, Sheree. I think library is a great place to do it. There's another, and you can get this. So I know I just said fuck all books, but there is a book that I would argue is worth your time. If you prefer watching it, it's such a good book on filmmaking that they made a mini series out of it. I think it's on HBO. I know you can get it at the library. And that's, there's a UCLA professor, or maybe he's USC. His name is Howard Suber. And he's a statistician and he's a film historian. And he encoded the top 100 films of all time. and found what are their similarities. And I believe there's between 7 and 10 main similarities that every of all top 100 films they all share. And he breaks them down into very relatable, very understandable. He's like a fascinating. He's like being a professor was like his calling, because he breaks it down so easily, and you just love listening to this guy, and you're like, wow, this all makes sense. But it's called The Power of Film. So if you're into books, read the book. If you're not into books, I highly recommend watching that series. And I think it's 7 episodes to equal the 7 main elements that all of the most popular and memorable movies share. And go ahead.
It looks like it is a 6-part produced by Turner Classic Movies, so it would be available on HBO Max.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Yep. So check it out. Like, I think there's a lot of elements that like sub-elements that he breaks into, and I think most of those apply to horror. I applied those to, I didn't know about it before we shot our film. I wish I did. It just so happened that I was fortunate enough that we hit all those 7 elements. And I would argue that the most important ones are like a triangulation of characters, right? So you don't just have a relationship between 2 characters. You have a trifecta of characters that have relationships with each other, like almost like a love triangle. And a great example would be Jaws, right? You have Brody, you have Quint, and you have who am I forgetting? Brody,
Hopper.
Quint, Hopper. Thank you. Yeah. So you have the 3, right? They each have a relationship with each other, but they all have a relationship in that kind of triangle. And for our movie, it was the kids, the man, and the woman, right? So the man and the woman had a relationship, the man and the kids had a relationship, and the kids and the mom had the relationship. And even in a furthering that, you have a relationship with the antagonist, Brett Carson, and the woman, the relationship with Brett Carson and the kids, and a relationship with the kids and, wait, who am I missing? That's it, the 3, right? So they all have relationships with each other. The other thing and speaking of bad guys, the other thing that Howard Super said that all 100 films have in common is that you don't have an antagonist that is purely a bad guy, right? You have an antagonist that is a human being, and you can identify with them. And so a lot of times you'll hear the term mirror antagonist. And a mirror antagonist is somebody who is very similar to the protagonist, but for their ethics, right? They have the same kind of morals, but the way they execute the ethics of those morals are completely opposite. And a great example of that is Darth Vader, right? Like, he is the perfect bad guy, but then as you get through the trilogy, and I guess some people would argue he's actually the protagonist of the first 6 films, right? But in a sense, that's the problem, is he the protagonist or is he the antagonist? And that's the perfect antagonist. Another thing is having the flawed kind of, if you think Westerns do this really well, your flawed protagonist. He's got some kind of physical or emotional or both issues the first time you meet them, right? So, example with the man, there's issues with him, right, where he's, you don't know what's going on with him, but he's clearly wounded. He's waking up naked in the snow. That's not something that just normal people do for fun. I do, but, that's just, that's me and being where we live. So that's, you got to raise them kids right. So where's Dad? Oh, he's out in the snow again. Oh, why does he have to be naked all the time? Anyhow.
We've all been there, man.
Yeah, that's right. Like, we can all relate. That's why we love horror. No,
Don't threaten me with a good time.
yeah, there you go. I think a good example is a lot of, and I've said this before on a lot of interviews I've done, is yes, Uncontained is a horror movie, but it's also, I structured it as a Western. So there's a famous, I would argue some of the best Westerns, even though, they're American, are done by Italians, because they went through this fascist phase post World War II. They got rid of Mussolini. They were recovering from having a fascist for a leader. And so you had Sergio Leone and you had Sergio Corbucci. And I structured Uncontained after Sergio Corbucci because he has a flawed protagonist who generally has some kind of emotional scar. They lost their, and Disney does this really well too. The main character of every Disney movie, one of the parents has died, or both of the parents, and, sometimes in front of the kid, right? Horrible. So emotional scar. In a lot of Carbucci Westerns, you have a character who is either physically wounded or emotionally wounded because they lost their child or their wife, or both. They lost their wife, and in trying to save them, they lost an eye or something, right? So that's interesting. You're like, okay, this is, you feel this character has background, and that makes them feel more grounded and more real. Another thing that Howard Subert mentions is he talks a lot about having a character, your main character, has a fate, right? We don't need to go back to, and that's, I think a lot of people get stuck on Joseph Campbell's 12 to 14 points of the hero's journey. That's something that we did maybe up to the 80s. Right. And if you think about pacing in movies now, whether it's horror, drama, whatever, we just as a society no longer have the attention span to establish a character or a feeling or a tone or whatever. We don't do that anymore. Right. We do it quicker and maybe more efficiently. But you look back to a movie like The French Connection or everything, or Jaws or other movies from the 70s and 80s that we think are classics and phenomenal. They take forever to establish the physical geography and the emotional geography. So, and real quick, emotional and geography and physical geography. The reason you need to set a physical geography, the time, the place, the setting, all your establishing shots, the reason you need a physical geography is because you cannot attach the audience emotionally to a character without it. So you can't get to the emotional geography of your characters without establishing a physical geography first, and that's why having great shots are so vital, right? You've put the audience in the place. I worked with a great director on 11/22/63. He's a BAFTA award-winning British director. His name is James Strong. He's probably most famous for doing Doctor Who and Broadchurch, the series Broadchurch. And his advice, I think he won a BAFTA because everyone's like, why does it feel like I'm part of whatever you shoot? I feel like I'm part of the story. And he said, it's simple. I set up the characters who are going through something extremely emotional, and I invite the audience in. So he'll start in the hallway, and you'll see a wide shot of them sitting on a couch. And then he'll cut to a kind of almost a medium shot, waist up, and you're a little bit closer, and they're just around the corner. And then next thing you know, you're sitting next to them, and you just organically feel like you walked in and sat down next to these characters having the most intimate conversation about losing a loved one or cheating on their wife or whatever. And that's a great example of you're setting the physical geography, the house, and then you're just naturally luring people into the emotional geography, right? And so those are, that's one way to get close to your characters. And again, passive storytelling, you want to absolutely make sure that people are engaged with your characters and with the story, and you don't interrupt it. So back to the last point I'll make about Super is your characters have a fate. All your characters have this fate because you're telling a story about them. There are plenty of dramas where the characters have no fate and they kind of sputter around, and you're spending a day in their life, and you're like, why am I wasting 2 hours of my time, 2.5, 3 hours of my time watching somebody who could be my next door neighbor? I don't care. I really don't care. A lot of people enjoy that, but again, I think we're here because we love horror, and what I love about horror and what I love about great dramas and actions is that you have a character who is generally flawed. They don't know what's going on, but they have this interesting fate. And it doesn't have to be grand. It can be like Luke Skywalker, right? Farm kid, he's fated. He has this fate. He's going to bring balance back to the universe and the galaxy, right? And he doesn't know it yet. But no matter what he does, that's going to happen, right? His aunt and uncle are murdered horribly. He's met by this oracle or this older person, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's going, whether he likes it or not, it's going to happen. And Howard Super makes the point that the most interesting main characters are the ones that take control of their fate and make it their destiny, right? And going back to Luke Skywalker, we've all seen the episodes 4, 5, and 6. he takes control of his destiny at that moment when he's facing off the Emperor and Darth Vader, and he just beat his father, cut his hands off and his legs off or whatever he did, right? And the second he takes his lightsaber up, he's like, no, I'm already a Jedi, and he throws it down. He took control of his fate, and that's his destiny. He determined that's his destiny. And a lot of times, to me, the most interesting main characters are the ones that take control of their fate, and their fate being something that they absolutely hate or they despise the most, and they embrace it and say, I'm taking this, control of this fate is now my destiny. I did that. I tried to do that Uncontained, where you have this main character, the man, and he hates zombies, right? They killed his wife, and his wife kills their baby, eats its head. He finds them horrible, scarred. He thinks there's, if there's one living, he wants to kill them all, right? And the fact that he has to come to terms that he actually is one himself, and at the end, he has to embrace that and become what he despises the most in order to save his new surrogate family, right? That's taking control of his fate and choosing to be, that's now my destiny. And he's going to arguably be the alpha and lead the zombie horde, right? That's the last thing he would want to do. But then once he decided, this is now my destiny, he hits that arc, and now you've made that character arc. So I think that all makes sense. I don't know if I think in general, these are the biggest questions I get from people asking about, like, what does it take to write a script, and what do you consider when you write a script? That's what I do. So physically, getting into the writing aspect of scripts, I would say if you're going to write, number one, invest and buy Final Draft. I don't know anyone in the industry that doesn't use Final Draft. It is the standard. And it sucks because I think it's like $300 or $200 or whatever it is to buy. But it is what everyone uses, and you need to get used to it if you want to write film and television. There's no substitute. So do that.
Can I kick it for the bro kids one more time?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. If you have an EDU, whether you're a student or a professor or just work in the building, you can get Final Draft for a student discount.
Nice.
That's how I got it my last year of teaching, because I was like, I'm not teaching anymore, but you know what I will do? Use this discount.
And I think too, if you can, I might be, so I bought Final Draft 10 or 9, and I bought that from somebody else. So I think at that point you could buy someone else's license. I don't know if you can do that anymore.
They have it set up so you can share, like a collaborator situation.
Okay.
I'm not smart enough to figure it out, and I write alone. But there is that option too. If you are not near a school and somebody has it, you could be like, "Hey, friend."
Yeah. I think too, there's a free version. I used that for a while, but it gets super annoying with ads, and it's very basic. Yeah. So maybe it's to allure you and just playing like, okay, fuck it, I'll buy it. But Final Draft is great because it's the standard for the entertainment industry, and get it. And then once you get it, write every day. It doesn't matter if you're good. It doesn't matter if you know what you're doing yet. Just get used to using that program, because it breaks down slug lines. It's so easy to use. It's so user friendly. And the faster you can write, the better writer you'll be. The other thing I recommend if you're going to write is you can go to the Academy Awards website, and you can download the previous year's scripts for best nominated screenplays. And there you'll see, it's interesting, a lot of Academy Award nominated scripts are vastly different in style, but there are elements in every one of those scripts that are the same. And those are the ones that you need to pick out and go, okay, I have to have these. Like, a perfect example is every script has to be written perfect present tense. When people send me their scripts and I look at them, the first thing I notice is that there's a lot of ings. There's no ings in script writing, right? I mean, technically there are, but I'm not going to get into that now. Everything has to be as if you're watching it. So Steve isn't running up the hill. Steve runs up the hill, right? Steve doesn't sit down after he gets to the top of the hill. Steve sits. right? So you have to write perfect present tense because you are reading the script as if you're watching it, and that's vital to when you get into production. There's also, yeah.
I just want to add there's always such a barrier to entry in any of these art forms, but specifically screenwriting, where there's no way to check your credentials. So industry-wide, it feels like there's a sort of like, are you complying with the format that checks your credentials at the door? So if you have a brilliant idea, if you have a brilliant story, but it isn't formatted correctly, either not in Final Cut or it's not in present perfect, those sort of things will sort of close the door, even if your script is great. I just wanted to, these sort of behavioral barriers to entry, there is a lot of investment in yourself that has to go into this, even if you have a great story. So it's worth reading those scripts.
Thank you. 100%. Like the first thing, there's probably three things that any scriptwriter, any reader that is going to advance you into making a film or television from your writing, right? The first one is you don't have proper slug lines. Slug lines are establishing the location. It's the interior, exterior, house, and it's a day or night, right? You have to have that. I get so many scripts where they're like, well, I couldn't decide if it was day or night, or it doesn't matter. It does matter. If you can't decide where your setting from your brain in your movie is going to be, then you have no business sharing your script with somebody that might advance your career. You have to have proper slug lines. That is the most basic element. The other element right now is scripts. I can't think of a single script, if you're trying to break in, that should be more than 90 pages. I constantly see scripts that are over 90 pages, and it's like, that no one is going to read that. I mean, to be honest, no one's going to read your script anyhow, but they're going to read the first page. And when they read the first page, the first thing before they read the first page, if there's more than 90 pages, they're like, nope. I mean, everyone is looking for an excuse not to read your script, right? Sheree, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just seconding that. As a reviewer, when that movie gets long and it doesn't change my life, I get very mad.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it shouldn't be. So I was going to talk about this later, but okay, so distribution-wise, film fests, right? Do or don't do, right? Film fests, I know for a fact, are trying to pack in as many movies as possible. And they're looking for films with a running time between 60 and 80 minutes now, right? Because then instead of packing in 5 movies a day at that one theater, they can pack in 10, right? Or 7, or whatever it is. I don't know what that says for quality, right? Like 90 pages, generally you can go, it's about, if you're a good writer, 1 page is a minute, right? So at 90 pages, you either might be 92 minutes or you might be 88 minutes, but generally an hour and a half. If you can't say what you need to say in an hour and a half, you need to refine what you need to say, right? So that's you need to really consider that. Also, film fests, I go back and forth. I think they're great networking opportunities. I think they're phenomenal. I think if you don't have a distribution scheme prior to deciding to produce your film, it's one way to get in. What I don't like about film festivals is that I personally was introduced to, I'm not going to say who it is, but they have this title about, it's film festival. I don't want to give away. It's film festival professor. No, that's too obvious. It's film screening doctor. No, that's too obvious too. It's film festival something. But for a certain amount of money, and not a small amount of money, they will get you into a film festival. They have about 20 film festivals that they have screeners in. And if you pay them, they will get you into all those film festivals. And so I had a Zoom meeting with this person, and they said, "Oh, your movie will be fantastic for Black film festivals." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why it would be interesting. Why Black film festivals?" And she's like, "Well, because you're African American content." And I'm like, "Do you have your Zoom on? Like, are you looking at who I am? Like that's." But okay. But the idea to me that you could pay somebody thousands of dollars and guarantee that you would get in these certain film festivals is appalling, right? Like then that's just the ultimate cheat. I think the other problem is if you're trying to get distribution through a film festival, there used to be 5, main film festivals that you could get distribution through. That's not even true today. Like, we are in such a weird moment in time right now where you have consolidation of our industry. You know, production is down 68% in the United States, right? All the films that are being produced right now are being shot in Ireland because Ireland offers these just ridiculous cash rebates and incentives. There's Georgia right now, who they spent billions of dollars making it kind of like the Hollywood of the South, right? They have all these gigantic sound stages, and they're all sitting empty right now. Crew from Georgia that have been making wonderful living for the last 20 years and are now trying to flee to New Mexico, and their production is down to, I just saw something the other day, I believe they're at 5% of what they used to be. And that's New Mexico. That's where Disney decided that they're going to move their studios to and produce there, right? But Disney is now building I think they're building a facility in England, if I'm not in, if I believe it's England. We are just not competitive right now. The most competitive state for shooting film right now is New Jersey. They just passed a bunch of laws. They have a new studio system. I believe their production is actually up like 40%. But there's only about 5 states that studios or people with budgets over $5 million will consider to shoot their productions in. So we're in this phase where, because of that, we just don't have the buying power anymore. How many of us have heard about movies that have won Sundance and have not gotten distribution, right? So that is a major issue right now. I would still tell you and argue, if you really want to say something, you have something to say, and try and stick to one thing, right? Focus on that one thing that you really want to tell people, and tell it through metaphor, right? You know, if it's something where you lost a leg in a horrible accident and you've been hiding that, right? Tell it through a shark movie. Tell it through, a werewolf movie. Tell it that, use metaphors. But that's such a vulnerable moment in your life that you could share through, and that's what makes awesome horror movies. It makes, make unique horror movies. I'm sick and tired. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm sick and fucking tired of watching something that's number 12 or a remake or whatever. I mean, not just in the horror community, but I mean, how many fucking Spider-Man movies can we do with a brand new Spider-Man, right? How many more, do we need another Scream? Do we need another Halloween? How many more times can you, poor Michael Myers, right? Or poor Jason Voorhees, or let those guys sleep. How many times do they have to die?
Don't come after Jason. Jason's my favorite.
Yeah.
I'll show up for Jason every time.
Yeah. But I mean,
I got a couple of thoughts for you, Morley.
Yeah, what's that, Matthew?
So first and foremost, and this will all come full circle, but yeah. I really like that you talked about telling your truth, because I think that's something that, not only with the emotional aspect of that movie, and also just the mortality and the focus on existence and how it actually ties into the zombie genre, really gives me a better understanding of your film. But also, with just being a huge indie supporter myself, I make my platform a huge supporter of indie. If I see an indie film going into theaters, whether it's something that's up my alley or not, I try to go and support it. And also, being a huge physical media collector, when you talk about directors' commentaries and hearing someone's vision, I think that's one thing that's made me sad. I've gotten older with the digital platform, the accessibility and how much quicker it is to viewers. But I think there's something lost in the art form for you guys as filmmakers. When you have something like a physical media, look, when I get a film, I know I already love the film. I want to know all the special features. I want to see the director's commentary. And of course, I want that slipcover and that art, okay? But I think that's something that's lost. And I appreciate not only what certain people do, like what you're doing to reach out in social media, what you're doing on podcasts, that's huge for you and your platform and your film. So I applaud you for what you're doing. But like I said, as a huge supporter of indie in general, I thank you for what you guys do and the efforts that you put in to your art form.
Thank you. Yeah, I think But that's, I think all that is born out of the fact that we love horror, right? Like I am a horror fan before I think I loved horror when I was a cop because it was the only genre that made my brain think, right? Like, yes, it's an escape, but it's an escape on your own terms, right? And we love horror because we need to figure out what's the story, what's going to happen next. We engage with it. I don't think any other genre comes close. Maybe science fiction, but if you're a horror fan, it's because you have to consume something that is stimulating, right? You're not a dumb shit, right? If you're not watching, just, I hate to go there, but like comedy, right? Is like almost sometimes some comedies, you know which ones I'm talking about, are like the lowest form. We all need them to like blow off steam at some point, but that's not something that I would consume every day, right? Like that gets old and stale fast. Whereas horror, I could watch 5 horror movies a day every day, right? Like, and that's because I think with good horror, good indie horror, you're stimulating people's brains. And that's, I wish we were back to the 70s and 80s, even the 90s of horror, where you think about the horror movies that were being taken chances on. I mean, even look at Alien. They took a chance on Alien, right? The Fox was not gonna. That sat at Fox for how many years before finally Star Wars came out, and they're like, yeah, greenlight anything science fiction, and then they're like, did anybody read that script? I don't think so, because it's just like that would have never been made, but it got made. Look at, I know it's not a horror movie, but look at Highlander. That is an insane film when you think about it. That would not be greenlit today. I know the remake has been greenlit, but see conversation 5 seconds ago about remakes. Like if we want, I think that's the part of also being a horror fan is we want something that's interesting and new and unique, right? Like we want, if you're gonna retell Halloween or Texas Chainsaw or whatever, first of all, don't touch the original, right? Because I would argue those originals are phenomenal. They're classics for a reason, and they are a snapshot of that moment in time. When I talk about tell something, your truth, and you have something to say, Tobe Hooper had something to say about society in that moment. He captured the flavor, the tone, and the aspect of what he saw the world in that time frame, right? To remake that to today, go make something else. Go say, you should have plenty to say about the world. Go say it and go make that movie, right? So I think we're starving for new stuff. And I think CinemaCon just wrapped this week, and you had Tom Rothman from Sony actually coming out and saying, we need to do A, B, C, and D if movies are going to survive in the theaters. And one of the things he said is we need unique movies. We don't need remakes. It's like, wow, did he say that out loud? The head of a studio is saying this? Like, what? And he's right. And take a look at Finding, was it Matthew Nichols? Is that the title? Did I get that right? That just came out. The 2 Canadians go to a theater owner conference and are like, hey, can we distribute in your theaters? And Regal and AMC were like, yeah, let's put in 1,000 theaters. I think that is, if that's a precursor of what's going to happen, that's a great moment for indie film. Unfortunately, in 1,000 theaters, that's almost a wide release. They made $300 some thousand. That's great, but somebody's in the red on that, right? Like somebody's out a couple $1 million. And so I don't know, and if we can break that model and figure it out, I think there might be a future for more indie films in theaters. I hate seeing when you see like, oh, I can't wait for not Undertone, but I can't wait for this new movie to come out. It's going to be in 50 theaters across this,
Backrooms.
It might as well not be, right? Like, because those are going to be 10 o'clock showings, midnight showings, right? Super Mario Brothers 5 is going to be taking up all the time slots, and no one is going to, you're starving that movie. And on top of that, the overhead to put the movies in theaters is so costly. That overhead is passed then down to the filmmaker. So the filmmaker will probably never see a profit on their film for years, if they're lucky. And those profits will come from streaming. Right now, when you start to think about concept, right? Think about passive audience. That's what you're going to do. Tell your truth. Figure out how to write it. Vomit it out on the page. And just rewrite. And then shoot your shot. Get it in there. But have 2 things you always have to keep in the back of your mind. Who is my audience? I would even argue who's my audience's audience. And the other thing in the back of your mind is what's your distribution scheme? You should always have that in the back of your mind. Don't make a movie and say like, oh, I don't know I don't know how the people are gonna see it. Like that's the hard part, right? As creatives, it's hard to execute. And I would argue, make sure that you have some kind of line into getting it. I think Film Hub might be the way to go. We got distribution through a studio. I would say that is not the way to go, because you end up, if your film does well, they find a way to hang on to the profits. If your film doesn't do well, they hang on to the profits, right? And there's no actual honest reporting, right? So a lot of people might see your film, but seeing seeing the return on that for you is very hard and difficult in a long process. I was told, so I had a relationship prior because of my experience doing big budget stuff. I had relationships with people at large streamers. And so I sent them the director's cut of our film and said, is this something that you would just outright acquire? And I got a yes. But then they were also, because they're friends, they're honest with me. They're like, I would actually put this out on AVOD because you'll actually make more money than what we would pay you, which is refreshing because you don't usually get honesty from someone in Hollywood. So if you have a network and you have friends, utilize those relationships and ask them questions. They want to help you because if they're good people, they're good people. And so I took that advice, and we did make a ton. I think Tubi, I know that their scale, if your movie is out on Tubi, their scale is not what it used to be, but because they're littered with commercials, that's how you make money, right? If you can't get into theaters and you figure out what your budget can be, you can actually make a very decent profit just being on Tubi and having a popular movie on Tubi. Same with Amazon. If you start trending on Amazon and you can get in the trending category where they're giving you, if they promote you and give you elevated CPH, which means you're getting double scale or triple scale, you're naturally going to hit the algorithms more and more people see it. And it's just like an avalanche of kind of, it's a process. I mean, it's search engine optimization essentially, right? Like as content creators, you probably know what that is, but essentially you want to trend. If you trend on social media, you're going to trend on platforms. And a lot of studios just don't know what that is. I don't know how many conversations I've had with friends who are high-level studio execs, and they have said almost the same thing in not the same terms, but essentially they write it off as, well, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. That's marketing. Talk to marketing, right? We had a zero ad spend on marketing, so I knew I had to reach out to the horror community and say like, hey, would you please watch my film and review it, right? And would you be interested to have me on a podcast or whatever? And the horror community, like you have already said, is very supportive of indie film. And if it's a decent indie film, they're extremely supportive, right? And so that's why the only reason we're profitable and overperformed as we did was because of the horror community. That's it. There is no, again, zero ad spend. We didn't have any billboards. We weren't on magazines. We weren't our trailer wasn't before any other movies online or in the theaters. It was sheerly through content creators like this right now, right? Like this is where it's at. And I think horror is, again, one of those communities that's probably pretty unique in that regard. So if you have a great horror movie and you want to get it out to the world, you're in the right space right now, right? And you can be successful doing that. I would argue, for me personally, I don't know any other genre, maybe comedy, but nothing. You can do a horror comedy, right? I don't think anything beats the horror genre. So, but distributor-wise, I had some A-list producers tell me that it's just. I'll just tell you what they said because I didn't say it. They said distributors are scum of the earth. Like they're all just pieces of shit. They're the lowest form of life. They're going to take as much of your money as possible. That's one of our actors. Yeah. They're complaining.
I'm gonna say, I feel like I know that bark.
Yeah. She's like, my trailer is not warm enough. Why isn't it warm enough? And I don't have my white M&Ms. No. we don't feed a dog an M&Ms. Come on.
No,
But
of course not.
no. But yeah, no. So that I think, and they're correct. There's a lot of you have a lot of distributors who sound friendly and they say, "Oh, I love your movie. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic." I used something called NDTV, where it's a secure platform. You upload your movie to it. It's very much like Vimeo. You upload your movie to it. It encodes your movie. So anybody you send it to has a unique identifier. It tells you where they watched it, when they watched it, how much they watched it, if they shared the link. And it's extremely secure. It's so secure that that's what the Academy Awards use. It's what SAG uses. It's what the DGA uses whenever they have their FYCs, right? So whenever they have an awards, they use NDTV. Highly recommend it. I sent that out to, I probably had 20 distributors that I had, either a relationship with or somebody that knew them. I sent it out to all of them. We got 17 offers out of those. Not one, or sorry, that's a lie. There was one British company that watched our movie. Otherwise, no one watched it for more than a minute, and they all made offers on it. Oh, I loved your film. So phenomenal. Just emotionally hit me hard. In your creator brain, you're like, oh yeah, awesome, they love me. But then you look at NDTV and you're like, they watched 1 minute, like a minute of the film. They'll probably watch the trailer. They won't look at your pitch deck. They won't look at anything. They don't like to read. They look at your log line. You have to, every email you send a distributor, you have your log line. You have a pitch deck attached, right? Here's the actors in there. Here's their social media numbers. Here's what the movies they've been in before. Here's what the movie's about. Here's some images. Here's the director's statement. None of them read it. Like, they don't have time to read it. They're money grabbers. All they care about is how can we market this movie. The fact
I assure you, they pass that along to the press as well.
Yeah.
We see the log line, the director's statement. They
Yep.
think that's what we get whenever they're trying to get us to watch the films as well.
Yeah, they see, and that's what they see it. This is just something that I can pass through as part of the business, right? They don't have degrees in film. They don't care about film. Like the amount of distributors I've talked to, our sales agents, they have a business degree. They went to an Ivy League school, and they're like, this is a quick moneymaker, right? So they'll shine you on and tell you, oh, you're from phenomenal film. Oh, what a director, you're a voice of the future. Like, okay, whatever. I know you didn't watch the movie. Why lie to me? I know that you didn't watch the movie. What are we doing? There was one distributor, Film 4 in England. They watched the movie like 15 times, and like 5 different people watched it, and they loved it. And I should have gone with them because they loved the movie, but I didn't. I chose to go with somebody bigger. And you just have to be very careful. The other piece of advice I would give that you absolutely have to do, and somebody told me, you need to do this, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll get somebody. Get a fucking attorney. Do not sign anything without a phenomenal entertainment attorney. Don't get a family law attorney. Don't get a criminal law attorney. Get an entertainment attorney who's done contracts before, right? There's a bajillion of them in LA. You spit in any direction, you're going to hit 10 of them, right? So get an entertainment attorney, pay the money to get them to look at that long form contract to make sure that you're covered, right? That will protect you in the future because there is so much fine print in that 21 pages. There was a sales agent, the first one to make an offer for us, gave us a $350,000 minimum guarantee. Minimum guarantees aren't around anymore. They haven't been around for probably 10 years. But so to have somebody that offers a $350,000 minimum guarantee is such an ego boost in the moment. But then you read the fine print and it's, oh, what do you know? This is here's your $350,000, but they're going to take travel expenses out of that. They're going to take per diem out of that. They're going to take delivery fee out of that. There's all these little tiny fees, parking fee, consideration fee, development fee. It's like, I don't know what all that's just, those are all made up fees so that at the end of the day, you end up owing them money, right? So you have to be so careful with sales agents. And I'm not saying there aren't some out there. I would argue Concourse Media is a great one. Black Mandala is a great one. It's just the fact that because they're good, you might as well, it's a long line, right? Aggregators might be the way to go. They take their 20%. That's it, right? You're going to get that. If you're lucky, I think the majority of independent filmmakers today get a rev share of anywhere between 60-40 And if you're really good at arguing, if you're really good at negotiating, you're going to get an 80-20. But generally, it's about 60-40, 60 to the filmmaker, 40 to the distributor, right? But also, again, that's after fees, right? Because there's a delivery fee. You have to get E&O insurance. You have to make sure your music cues are all set. Your M&A is done. There's all kinds of penalties that you might have to pay if anything is delivered late. If you send a trailer to Apple TV and they play your trailer and it's wrong in any way, shape, or form, we ran into this issue. They didn't sync the sound properly. So to go back to them and have them swap the trailer out in front of it, I believe was $15,000. So it's an insane amount of money. So you're just like, no, leave it. It's fine. But that is the problem with distribution, right? They eat into your costs. There's so many hidden costs to making a movie. You really need, and this is a big P-producer moment, you really need somebody that knows what they're doing when it comes to making a film, that has experience making a film, that can guide it from cradle to grave, right? You need somebody that has experience dealing with distributors. They have experience writing contracts for actors. They have relationships with SAG members. So their SAG coordinator, they can make sure that, so for SAG, their only job is to make sure the actors are taken care of. And SAG scale right now, I believe, is 211 a day, right? So regardless if you're, like say Josh Duhamel, right? You want to get him on your film because you want a name actor in your film. I think the minimum fee for him is $500,000. If you're a really good friend, he loves your script, whatever, he might say, I'll do it for scale. And if he does it for scale, he's getting paid $211 a day. SAG has to confirm that he's going to get 211. They have to confirm that your background actors are getting paid whatever rate it is for your state. And then they will say to you, we're taking 30% of your budget to make sure that in case your film goes belly up, the actors are paid for their time. Well, for us, with a $55,000 budget, 30% was killer, right? So it's having a relationship with that SAG coordinator saying, look, we're in a tiny little film and we're employing 10 SAG actors. Like, is there any chance it could be, it's such a small film and blah, blah, blah. And then they reduced it to 7%. But that's why you need a really good producer, right? We did not have a big P-producer on our film. We had some good producers. Like we had Rachel Palachewski, who was phenomenal at taking care of anything to do with paperwork, right? Line producing, unit production management. She was phenomenal at getting all the contracts signed, sealed, and delivered. You need that person because as creatives, again, we're not great at executing. A big P-producer is someone that's probably produced between 4 and 5 movies that have been seen distribution in theaters. They have relationships with other producers, studios, movie actors, whatever. While I'm talking about actors, again, we're in a weird space right now in the United States as far as making movies, right? So it used to be you weren't going to get distribution without a recognizable actor, right? You could, but you just weren't going to make your money back. And you definitely weren't going to get worldwide distribution unless you had an actor. I heard something terrible the other day. David Dismalchian, right? The Night with the Devil, Polka Dot Man, and Suicide Squad. Phenomenal actor. Murderbot, whatever that TV series is. I can't remember the Alexander Skarsgård, right?
Murderbot, yeah.
Dexter Resurrection. He was fantastic in that.
Yeah, like
Just
he
funny.
is. Yes, I mean, he is a phenomenal fucking actor, right?
Yeah.
He does not engage worldwide sales. You're not going to get pre-sales off of having him in your movie. What you do have is that other actors respect him so much, they're like, oh, shit, David Dismalchian's in your movie? Well, then let me take a look at the movie. And then you might get like a Timothy Oliphant or a Josh Duhamel who has some cachet in worldwide sales. So it used to be you needed an A-list actor, and even Helen Mirren, even outside of Scarlett Johansson, there were very few women that would qualify for pre-sales for worldwide if they were the only A-list recognizable actor in your film. Right. Now, we're at a point where there are a ton of A-list actors not acting because there's nothing being shot here. Right. It's not a good sign when you see a commercial for car insurance and you have 3 A-list actors in that same commercial. That is not a good sign for where our industry is right now. But that being said, if you're independent film, this is the first time in probably our lifetimes that you could go to a studio and say, hey, I got this really good script. I've got it funded at, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, a million. And the actors that would have typically just, their teams would have been like, no, not enough money because no one's working right now. And they're like, hey, give me a job. You might actually get someone to look at that movie, right? And if you have a big P producer who has relationships with talent agencies, that actually might be a go. Now, that being said, after all that, forget about everything I just said, because we just sold worldwide rights to Uncontained, and the sales agent is out of New Zealand. And they said, it doesn't matter anymore. Recognizable actors in the horror space and the kids space, they don't matter. If you have a good film that's done well on social media, you can get worldwide sales in foreign territories that will be really good. So, and that's partly due to piracy. That's partly to do with the fact that we are no longer just a domestic social media world. We are global, right? Everybody in every country with a phone can see what you're putting out right now, right? They have access to it, whether they have a VPN or whatever, people will see that. So it's fascinating to me that we had no recognizable. I mean, Peter O'Meara in our film, he was in Band of Brothers, he was in Nightfall, he was in one of the Resident Evil movies, right? I would argue he's recognizable, but when you say Peter O'Meara, people don't go, oh yeah, Peter O'Meara, right? He is not. He's not Al Pacino, right? But that being said, we are again at a point where, because we are a global society now when it comes to entertainment, you do have opportunity to be seen in Asia and Russia and Africa and Australia, right? And Europe. If they're also not too far away from the spaces that we are, what they find interesting as far as horror goes. Think about how many foreign horror movies now are very similar to Western horror movies. Korea, Japan, yeah, they all have their kind of unique interests. There's certain elements that are different from their society, which is fascinating. But in general, if it's scary there, it's scary here, right? There are some phenomenal scary films coming. Think about the scary films that have been coming out of South Africa. Think about the scary films that have been coming out of Zimbabwe. Think about we have so many television series now, and also India, right? Gajillion people in India. They make more movies a year than any country on the planet, like 4 times more movies every year than anyone on the planet. So distribution is there if you're seeking it, but I would caution you that is the worst part of being a filmmaker. Be extremely careful when it comes to distribution. Gary Arbach, who is I would say he's a mega producer. He was the original kind of king of reality TV. He did The OC, he did Jersey Shore, he did The First 48 Hours, right? The best advice he gave me was, you have your movie done, you want the world to see it, you're super excited, you can't wait for them to see what you have to say, take your time. Like, you have that done. Very few people can complete a film, right? Get a film in the can and ready to deliver it to distribution. He said, take your time and be very careful on how you market it and how you do it. Be careful what film festivals you want to enter it in to get publicity and network, and then be careful with who you actually sign with, because when you sign with a distributor today, hopefully that's on AVOD channels like Tubi or Amazon, you're going to be in that relationship for at least 10 years, if not 30, right? A lot of distributors will say, if you want us to distribute your film, it's a 30-year contract, because that might be as long as they can milk it, it's those 30 years. So I would say, of all things to be worried about, distribution is the one. It sucks ass. As far as producing films is actually really fun, right? Like, you get that big P producer on there, and then next thing you know, you have to get a really good sound design, because no one's forgiving if you have bad sound, right? You have to have a good composer. You have to have a great cinematographer, because the audiences, I think, in the horror community are a little more forgiving if it's not shot well. But everyone you talk to, whether you want to put it on Hulu, Disney, Netflix, Amazon, they are less forgiving about. In fact, Netflix is so unforgiving when it comes to production value, right? They have, in fact, there is a list of cameras that they allow. If you want your project to appear on Netflix, it has to be shot on a list of, I think it's like 10 cameras. Maybe it's 15 cameras by now. But that camera that you shoot your film on has to be part of that list, or they won't even look at your film. So you have to be aware of kind of all those things. But that being said, again, that's a producer's job. Your job as the writer, and this is where I'd also argue, if you write something, there's no one better to direct it than you. No matter how phenomenal, you can be an A-list writer and take all these concepts out of your brain and put them on paper, and you can be the best at articulating those thoughts. But there are still moments between the lines that you are not able to communicate through that script that people are going to know and understand the final vision that you have better than you. No one. And with a great DP, I think you can direct your own project, right? I would say you don't have to have as much experience as you think you need to have to be a great director. If you love film, you've listened to the commentaries, right? I would argue you should act, right? You should act in anything. I don't care if it's improv, if it's local theater, whatever. If you're going to direct, if you're going to write, you need to figure out how you act. Act in front of the mirror or act in the shower. Do something, but at least figure out what acting is like so that you're able to trust your actors. And I'm not arguing that you need to act in order to give them advice on how to act. If you hire a good actor through casting, you're not going to have to tell them how to act. You're just going to have to tell them what you want, and they're going to be able to give it to you. Right? Good actors are able to do that. Now, if you cast people that aren't actors, that's a whole different story. Like, I cast my wife, she's an investment banker. I cast my kids, they're kids. I cast my dog, and she's the only one that has acting experience out of those 4. Right? So that, I think, you can direct people, again, if you love movies and you know what is going to end up on the screen. Always have in your mind, if you're directing, what is it going to look like in the edit? Because that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the day. It doesn't matter what it looks like it matters what it looks like in the frame. But most importantly, what is it going to look like when your editor is putting it together, right? And so getting people that have never acted before, if you're going to get them to be natural and say words that aren't wooden, you're set. If you don't know anything about acting, I would caution you against theater actors, especially children. If they've gone through a drama school, they've gone through theater, through a theater program, theater is so vastly different than film. Film is tiny and small, and you can see what the actor's thinking in their eyes by just having the camera stay on them. Theater acting is gigantic and big, and they make everything, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Like, this is just not, like, what are we doing?
As someone
here?
who's done both, I was gonna talk some nonsense here, but you're right. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, that's the thing of I think the 80s and 90s were heavy into casting theater actors. I mean, that's why we have Patrick Stewart and Ian Holm and Gandalf, what's his face, You Shall Not Pass.
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen, right, the Ians, right?
Yeah.
The reason you have them is because they are great at those powerful moments and those fantastical moments. They're not great at think about the best, most subtle actors. They're phenomenal. Robert De Niro, right? Like, I would say Jesse Chastain, right? I know she went to Juilliard, but she went to Juilliard I know she took theater and dance and everything else, but she went there for film, right? And Oscar Isaac, their classmates, they were there, they knew they were going to be film actors. And that's why everything they do is Michael Shannon, right? Like, the best actors that you can think of are super, super subtle. Jack Black, I'm kidding. But, you have, yeah.
Subtle is synonymous.
Yes.
If you want to work with a theater actor and you're directing, a good process to go through, if you're not getting what you need on the day, is to tell them to start at 0 and ramp, if you have the time, ramp it up and then stop them so they can do progressively bigger takes and then stop them whenever it's too big. Use the take before that. But I know you finished early on this film, and so you may not have that time, in a longer and it's running over.
That's exactly. So that's an excellent point. So if you're doing a film on a budget like ours, right? Like chances are, anybody that I'm talking to right now that wants to make their first film, you're not going to have a lot of money, right? And so what drives me crazy is you're going to have like 1 or 2 takes, right? That's it, because that's all time. That's time is money, and that's all you have time for, right? And so you're driving your AD insane. Like a good AD is great with schedule, right? And you get 1 or 2 takes. So when I watch a movie like a movie that a studio put out for $100 million, and I see an opening scene, like something I just watched last night on Amazon. I'm not gonna say what it is, but the last part of the title is man. The opening scene where you're like, what? This is the best take they had for an A-list actor? Is this weird opening scene that's way overacting, like ham-fisted, like what? Out of 20, 50 takes, this is what they came up with? It's, to me, that's unacceptable, right? Like you have literally hundreds of millions of dollars just for production. I'm not talking about marketing, right? So that's, I think, more jealousy on my part as a small-time filmmaker, is that they have the luxury of times and takes, right? And setup and everything else. Whereas if you're shooting a film on a budget, you're going from setup to setup to setup. You hope, if you're lucky and you have a big enough crew, they can do the next setup for you while you're shooting this scene. But, you're in such a crunch, and you're just hoping everything works out, and things aren't going to work out. And it's the ability to pivot and adapt when they don't, right? And I would argue, I know I'm going way back into horror now, but Alfred Hitchcock made a great point, right? Creativity is born out of obstacles. And that's true. When you're shooting an independent film and you have an obstacle come up and you got to get super creative, sometimes those are the best gems of your film, right? We had so many problems with our film when it came to the snow and it being, 5 below zero and windy, and we couldn't get this take because the wind was so strong, the sound wasn't able to pick it up. And, it's snowing and the camera lenses are frosting, or the batteries are dying quickly, right? But at the same time, because that's happening, it's like, well, can we approach this differently, right? Then every day that we were shooting, we knew it wasn't going to be perfect conditions for shooting, but we were able to get through that and come up with really creative ideas, and that's why we have certain angles that I think are born out of that creativity, right? We have moments of action where, like one I go back to is where the woman, the kid's mother, when Brooke needs CPR, she comes running from screen left, and she does this hook slide, and there just happens to be one dead leaf in the snow, and it hits the camera as she does that hook slide, right? Because we didn't have time to shoot her coverage of running, and we didn't have time to get her coming in and sliding in, whatever. We had one take, and that take, because we had to set it up that way, it just worked out. And I think if you get those.
My favorite part of the movie, hands down. I know that's like a dark part of the movie, but that gutted me.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, I think the audience, and I think a lot of people say like, oh, the audience is forgiving for independent horror because of this, or the audience is forgiving for that. I don't think it's that it's forgiving. It's that you have to take the time to craft a really good story. So again, we go back to that passive participation. They are so engaged that they either trying to figure out what happens next, or they're totally engulfed in the story or the moment, and they're emotionally attached. If you can attach them emotionally to more than one character, then your movie can kind of be about anything, right? And they won't even realize the messaging that you're giving them, right? And they won't even realize like, oh, this movie isn't about zombies. It's about something else, right? But they don't care, because they had a moment where you're like, I really connected with this film. And it's kind of an honor if you can get that done. If you can connect to other human beings that you're never going to meet, right, that we share in this moment, that's like a great honor to have. And I think that's something that I don't want to say filmmaking is, I don't want to sound like, oh, like this is awesome and filmmaking is going to save the world. But in a sense, it kind of does, right? Like it connects human beings through empathy. And that's a wonderful thing. When I was a cop, maybe I helped 100 people that'll never forgive me. 100 people, right? Our movie is, 50 million views, right? That's 50 million fucking people, Like, and if they can attach to a moment that makes us closer as human beings, that's way more important. Even if a percentage of that, 1% of that, did that, that's impactful. So I don't want to sound like it's a noble cause, but it's something. So I don't think we would all be here if movies didn't mean a lot to us. And to go back to Howard Suber, the crazy thing about movies is when you're watching them, right? Those moments in movies, you adopt those memories as your own, right? The best moments in movies, go back to Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat, right? Go back to Alien, the face hugger on what's his face, right? Like, what's his face. Right. But those moments are, the second I say that, you have an image in your head, right? Like the second you hear the Halloween theme, and you think of Laurie Strode, right? You instantly have an image. I say Leatherface. At least half of you saw him dancing with the chainsaw, right? Like that's something that is burned into our memories, and that's a collective memory, but that's also something that is in our personal collective. And that's kind of a weird thing when you think about it, right? But that's what we love, and that's kind of what makes us who we are as a society. So what else was I going to talk about? I feel like I'm pooped out. Like, I think I got everything. Did I talk about shooting your shot, punching people on set? I got that right. You gotta, if somebody's talking back on set, whether it's your DP or just slap them as hard as you can in the face, and that sets the tone immediately, and then you can get stuff done. I'm kidding. You don't punch people on set. Like, that's a really great way to end your career immediately. Like, no one's laughing. I'm like, oh. Right? Yeah.
All the unions are listening right now.
Yeah. Wait, where's this guy? What now? Okay. We need to get him on a list. But yeah, no, I think film. If you could walk away from one thing tonight, go make that movie. Don't wait. What are you waiting for? To get older? Like, get it done. Like, write every day. Make sure your script is great. Have your partner read it, and they're going to hurt your feelings and tell you this part sucks or that part sucks, and learn to live with those hurt feelings. And then when you finally sit with it for a day and you're like, oh, they're right. Fuck them. They're fucking right. They're always right. Whatever. Go fix those scenes and keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. Like, don't worry about stuff. Get it done. Vomit all your ideas on that page. It might not be a great idea, but something might come of that bad idea, right? And then rewrite it and rewrite. And then finally, if you have something that you think you like, send it out to somebody else to get their opinion. Don't send it to me because I'm not going to read your script, but send it to somebody who will and give you advice on it and tell you, like, yeah, I like certain things. Dan O'Bannon was sleeping on Ronald Shusette's couch when he wrote Alien, right? No one would read his stuff. He was eating leftover hot dogs from Dan O'Bannon's refrigerator, right? And he sent David Giler his script on Alien, and they hated everything about it except the facehugger scene. They're like, this is a metaphor for male rape, male on male rape. This is phenomenal. This movie is going to be great. And on top of it, Ronald Shusett, I think it was Ronald Shusett, was like, what if Ripley was a woman, right? On top, so you have these multiple layers, and then it was that one thing. You have a guy sleeping on someone's couch. He had that one good idea out of that, at that time, 120-page script, right? That the studio, that big P producers are like, we can get the studio to say yes to this. And then they rewrote that script with them, right? They sat down, you have experienced producers, and they're like, change this, this, and this. They got it down to how many page count it was, right? And they added Ash. Like, phenomenal. Like, the idea that you have this corporate entity always spying on everyone, right? Ripley they're going to cast it as a woman. Great. Like, fantastic. There's another layer. And on top of it, you have all these, it's a snapshot. Like, Ridley Scott has said multiple times, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space. You have a snapshot of what working conditions were like in the 70s, right, for blue-collar workers in space. Like, phenomenal, right? There's so many multiple layers, and it all started off on this guy on a typewriter on someone's couch, right? That's the difference between you and Dan O'Bannon. I mean, he made Alien. He went on to make Night of the Living. Wait, which one? Yeah, Night of the Living Dead, Return of the. Yeah, fucking cult classic, right? He wrote and directed that movie, right? So, I mean, you have an iconic filmmaker that is one step away from what you're doing right now, right? He can do that. It's just getting it in front of the right people, finding your group, your team, and saying, yeah, let's go shoot this. We're in a time now where you can rent a camera because you have so many people that have bought Reds, right? It doesn't matter if it's a weapon or a dragon or whatever. You can get a Red, you can get a cinematographer. There's more cinematographers than entertainment attorneys. You can find one and get them to shoot your movie, and they'll have their own camera, right? If you want to get down to what cameras to use, again, I would say Netflix is the standard. Use an Ari, use a Venice, use a Sony A6 or A7, use a Red, whatever. Get somebody on there that knows how to shoot well, interesting angles, and focus pull, right? You need a AC and somebody that knows all that stuff. And you can go shoot. If you don't have that, write a found footage movie and shoot it on your phone, right? You have something to say it, and do it. Don't sit back. I wish if I could go back in time, I would have shot Uncontained 10 years ago. I mean, it wouldn't have had kids in it, but it would have had a dog, right? You just write and that's the other piece of advice. I know a lot of filmmaker friends of mine hate this, but the major advice to come from execs for the last 30 years has been write your script with no budget in mind. Imagine you have the ultimate budget and write locations and characters and everything with no budget in mind, and that's going to be the best that you can write. I argue the opposite. Figure out where you want to shoot it and do it in a single location that you can make look like 40 different locations or 20 different locations. But have that site in mind and incorporate that into your script. You'll save so much time and money, and you'll have a better grasp of what you're going to shoot. It's more contained. Have the actors that are, you have disposable to you. Write it for those actors. Don't write it for Al Pacino. Don't write it for, Timothy Schmuckale. Don't write it for whoever. Write it for who you have access to. And then it'll be a better role. Write it for the way they speak, the way they act, and customize it to that. Custom your scripts. And then it all of a sudden becomes doable. And then go do it. There are so many, I could list the number of directors that you've seen their films. They've done 1 or 2 films already that we've all seen in the horror community. And I've had multiple conversations with them, and they are scared shitless to shoot another movie. And it's like, no, go shoot that movie. We have the resources. Reach out. If you don't have an actor, you're like, I don't have an actor that's gonna, whatever. Call me. I'll do it. There's so many actors right now in the indie horror space that are willing to work. Because at the end of the day, when I'm talking about you're not going to get development money, no one's going to option your script, you're not going to get an A-list actor because they're too much money, think about the line that you would have to get into, right? The idea that you're going to wait until you get a nameless actor attached, right? There are so many A-list actors that the B-list actors are out of work, right? So all the A-list actors are getting jobs. You have to get behind the B-list actors who are out of work right now, and you have to get behind the C-list actors who are all out of work right now, right? So you're just not going to get an actor attached because they're all waiting to get that next thing. Same with getting a script in front of somebody. Think about all the A-list writers right now who have 15 scripts, right? I've written 50 scripts so far. 5 have ever been picked up or produced or bought out of the 50, right? I have written, so Uncontained was my own, and I thought that was the best script I could do, right? Write all the time, but just think about if you're thinking, well, someone else is going to come along, or I'm just going to get this in front of the right director or the right actor or whatever. Do it yourself. You are your best person to direct your script, right, or your concept. One last thing I guess I'll end with too is that people ask me about shorts all the time. That is a really tough question. I see all the time in the trades, right? Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter. There's a guy who did a short. I'm not going to say what it is, but it got 9.9 million views. And a friend of a friend sent it to Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi was like, "Oh, I'd love to come on as an executive producer. Let's call Jordan Peele." And the next thing you know, he's got Sam Raimi and Jordan Peele, and they're gonna present it to Universal, right? And so he's gonna direct his first film based on his, I don't know, his 9.9 million. Is that viral? What's viral? Like 1 million?
Yeah, that's pretty viral.
Okay, so based on that viral short, he's now got these gigantic, I mean, negative above A-list producers getting and he's going to get a shot at shooting his first movie, right? Because he did that short. I would say that that's pretty atypical. I think there are a bajillion shorts out there, and if you're going to spend the time and the money and ask favors, just shoot a movie. Why spend time fleshing out a 10-page or 5-page or 50-page short when you can make a movie for about the same? You're already calling in those favors. You already got, if you can assemble the team, make that feature, right? You'll be able to get it somewhere. If at the very least it ends up on YouTube like this guy, it's still a feature. How many people would love to watch a feature for free on YouTube, right? If you're going to get out there, get above the crowd and don't shoot a short, shoot a feature, right? So I'm a little frustrated when I read stuff like that, because it's like, well, this guy did a short and now he's got, he's probably going to get a $20 million budget to shoot a movie, right? And I think about how many people I have, like filmmaker friends that I just mentioned, where they have 20 million views on their short, right? But no one cares. They can't get representation, they can't get funding, and that, I would say, is the majority of people that shoot really good shorts. I have a really good friend, he's a genius filmmaker. It kills me that his short is so good and that he's not getting any, like, just no takers on anything. And it's a phenomenal viral short. And, it hurts to have a friend like that that's just not getting, he had all those favors and borrowed and begged and maxed out all his credit cards, and he can't get anything, right? And that's, I think, a sign of the times. So I would argue, if you have that story, again, that you have to tell, that you have something to say. You have to have something to say. And if you have something to say, people will see that in your script. When I just said no one reads your script, or people are going to shit on your script, or, it's got to be less than 90 pages and everything has to be formatted properly. The one thing that experienced readers, I don't care if it's agent, executive, or another writer, what they look for is if you have a unique voice in your script. If I can read your voice in the script, you've got something, right? And that's because you have a truth to say and you have something to say. If you don't have something to say, you're just writing a script about, the creature from the Blue Lagoon or Black Lagoon, no one's going to give a shit. You have to have something that you're writing with passion. And again, if you can't get emotional about certain scenes in your film, your audience won't either. So if you have that, you can assemble a team, because they'll look at that script and go, man, they may not even know what to look for, that there's a voice in your script, a unique voice that has something to say. They may not realize that, but it won't matter, because they'll be like, wow, this is a phenomenal story. And you'll get people who will say, yeah, I'll come on, I'll shoot it for you. I'll be a gaffer. Like, I can get grips, right? You get a DP on, they're going to get a similar crew that they want to work with. They'll get that crew, right? And you get a sound guy, you're ready to go. Or sound person, you're ready to go. You have all that lined up, get your team, they'll invest time in it, and then hopefully there'll be some kind of payback at some point. But get it out there, right? Everyone that's listening can do it. Remember, Dan O'Bannon, hot dogs, couch.
I'm happy you mentioned voice, just because, like, a lot of people are afraid to write in their own voice. We're supposed to read the scripts, we're supposed to have our references, but we're not supposed to be like, let me sound like so-and-so, let me do what so-and-so did, because that gets us into this whole, I've seen this movie before every damn festival. I see the same movie 5 times.
Yeah.
Please have a voice, please have an opinion, just to, like, highlight what you were saying in that.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, too, I think there's a lot of criticism with Lee Cronin's Mummy right now. And they're like, oh, it's just Evil Dead Rise, like part 2 or whatever. I think, yeah, he has a distinct voice. And then you have someone who has that distinct voice, but maybe it was the wrong medium to use, right? But it is a distinct voice. And so much so that people are like, well, no, this is clearly his movie. That's what you want, right? When you have a movie, you want to be able to go, wow, that really impacted me because, and guess what? Back to Howard Super, it was popular, it was interesting, it was unique, and it was memorable, right? You want to strive for that with your audience. So I think it's easy for me to say, rip off the Band-Aid and bear what your most painful moments are in a character, because it's not easy to do and it's painful. But at the same time, once you get it done and do it well, and you'll know it's done well because it'll be cathartic for you. So once you have the catharsis, right, you'll be ready to go, right? And I think that's, again, now if you've lived an ultimate life of privilege and you've never had anything bad happen to you ever, then don't make a movie. Like this is not for you. But I'm pretty sure every human being on the planet has suffered through something, no matter who you are. Right about that. If you don't know what else. Now, I'm a Debbie Downer on a lot of stuff, but if you had something super positive happen to you, maybe that's your movie too, right? Like the second you have like something ultimately awesome happen to you and you're like, man, I wish I could tell everybody about this. Well, maybe that's a horror comedy, or maybe that's a Bigfoot movie, or maybe, it can manifest in so many different ways. But, there's countless movies that we can refer to where, like, if you think about it, you're like, oh shit, this movie let the right one in? Well, what's that about? Well, that must have been like, that's, I think is Swedish, right? Man, he must have had a fucked up childhood, or whatever. But wrote that movie, got it made, he feels pretty good about it now, right? Sandberg that did Lights Out, right? And then went on to do the Conjuring movies, right? And phenomenal director. Can't even speak English, working with English-speaking crews, but he had something in his past that he had to get out and talk, and put into commercially viable horror movie. Phenomenal. Now, I know I just shit on shorts, but, talk about the ultimate short, right? If you've ever seen the 15-second Lights Out short that he used to make that movie, just phenomenal short. But that being said, that was also 20 years ago.
Traumatized me.
Yeah, right. Like that messed up face, that little kid face at the end is just like, it was great. But again, right now, this is just we are in this really strange place in America when it comes to movie making. Like, I think it's unprecedented. A lot of people are like, well, this is just like when Charlie Chaplin got together and made United Artists, right? It's the collapse of the studio system, and it's like, I don't know. They didn't have tech billionaires investing into studio systems back then. They didn't have streaming. They didn't have writer strikes and actor strikes coming right out of a pandemic, right? So we just have this like cavalcade of chaos that's been going on, and I don't know anyone that knows what's going to happen. Verticals. People ask me all the time what I think about verticals. I think there's a lot of stupid money in verticals right now because no one knows what's going on. I think they've done really well. They're $8 to $10 billion industry in China, and they're almost a $20 billion industry in Saudi Arabia. We are not China or Saudi Arabia. Like, we are not those cultures. We don't do telenovelas. I know we have an audience for that, but in general, our Western culture, United States, Canada, Europe, we consume horizontal. Like, that's how we do our content consumption, right? When it comes to film. I don't know, maybe there'll be a moment right now, but I think you have so many companies just scrambling to monetize, right? Scrambling to get money and make money off of this new kind of phenomena that they're willing to do anything. And I would be very cautious against that. I think if you get into it now and maybe you can make some money. I've talked to 2 different vertical companies that want to they've approached me to do movies with them, vertical series. And I don't, to do a medium where there's no character development, and that in order to compete, like if you really want to compete in the vertical space, it's not telling a story at all. It's being able to adapt to the best vertical companies right now, have live at the minute algorithms that kick in and tell you what the consumer is watching, how long they're watching, if they're going to continue, if they're going to pay for the next episode, if they're waiting too long to pay for the next episode, how fast do they watch an episode, are they engaging with the online community that's built around that vertical, are they engaging with the characters from that vertical that they can do, right? A lot of verticals have it where you can actually talk to the characters. A lot of verticals have the option where they shoot multiple endings and you can choose the ending, right? They have analytics that are, within, they're like quantitative, they're quantitative, so they can do it in the second, right? In a split second, they can determine this ending is not working down south, so we're going to have this ending. Oh, that ending didn't work either. We're going to switch to this ending. That's insane to me. I don't know how you keep that pace of storytelling. It feels more like a video game, almost. So I don't know if that's your thing. Great, go for it right now, because I don't know that there'll be money in a year for that. I think you have a lot of A financing and B financing rounds going on right now with verticals. And I don't know, there's so many people pumping them out that I don't know that if that well is going to stay wet for a while. I think Samara's coming out of it soon. So, yeah, that's what I'll have to say about verticals. But yeah, if you're listening to this, shoot your movie. Go shoot your fucking movie, because you can do it. Dan O'Bannon and hot dogs. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Did I miss anything? Tim, was I supposed to hit something? I don't remember.
No, I think you were pretty thorough, but do any of the panelists have questions?
I just want to echo something that, and again, I come from theater, so don't hate me too much for that, Morley. I know you have theater background as well.
Yeah, there's love for theater. Come on.
Yeah. But when I was coming up and people came to me, and you echoed this, and I just want to reframe it because I think all three of these points are valid. It's bet on yourself and make your own opportunities. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with as a director, and that comes from the most experienced director all the way down, because your department heads are the subject matter experts. And observe the world, because when somebody gives you a chance to have something to say, or when you give yourself that chance, you better have something to say. Yeah. Those are the three pieces of advice I always lived by, and you echoed them here beautifully. I think they all needed to be restated.
Yeah, I think excellent. Those are excellent points, right? And I think if you can grab that crew, they're going to be more than. I mean, that's when you are. It's really fun to shoot a movie. It should be so much fun. It shouldn't be that you hate to show up to set every day. If that's a problem, you have somebody that's making that a problem. Get rid of those people. If you have somebody on set that is like, oh, this is not going to work for me, well, then you have to fire them. You don't have a choice, right? And that's. So I know that to be true because James Cameron faced that when they were shooting Aliens, right? He had an AD, British AD. They were all upset because you had this American coming in, or Canadian, whatever he is, coming in. It wasn't Ridley Scott doing the sequel, and you had an AD that's like, I'm not going to do that. And his producers, I think it was still David Giler, was like, you got to fire him. You don't have a choice. Fire him. He just said he's not willing to do something. And that, to your point, Vince, you need people around you that are collaborators and that are going to make it happen. It should be so much fun that you have to be able to say, no, we are not doing more than a 10-hour day, because you're going to have people surrounding you that you're having such a blast making this film. They're like, let's keep shooting 24 hours straight. Like, we don't care. No, you got to be safe. You have to be smart. Keep it to 10-hour days if you can. Because your crew's chances are, if they're not working for free, they're working for less than what they normally be getting. But if it should be fun because you're surrounded by the people that love you, right? And on top of it, you're going to be suffering together with them, and they're going to bond even more with you, right? People that suffered through a moment together. It's just phenomenal friendship building. Like, it's just, there's nothing like it. That chaos is just awesome. I'd say the next best thing to shooting a movie is like being there when your child's born. It's like very similar. A lot of screaming, a lot of blood. So, yeah. On that note, any other questions? Yeah, there are C-sections. Oh, I don't know if my wife wants them. I didn't know that. So I'll say that real quick. So my son was a breech, and it was like, so Jack in the movie, he was a difficult child, and he's always been but he was a difficult baby. And they tried to like do a inversion where they like move him because he was a breech, and they just couldn't do it because it's super stressful in pregnancy. So he was a cesarean, and we didn't want to know the sex of the birth until he came out, and so we had no idea. And for those of you that have never been through a cesarean section, the mother is laying on the table. There's like a skirt in front of her, so she can't see what's going on. She's got an epidural. She can't feel anything. And then the doctor's in there, and they've got like a slit this big, and they're moving their hand inside, and they're feeling around. And because Jack was breech, they're like, "Why? I can't feel a foot. Like I can't get a foot. I just keep getting scrotum. I get nothing but scrotum." And I'm like, "Well, it's a boy." Whatever, right? And then they finally get a hold of him, and I'm like, oh man, I hope that's not a scrotum. But they like yank him out of this tiny little hole, and it's amazing how they can pull a baby out of a human being. I mean, it is a lot like take your pick of alien movie, but it's a lot like that, right?
Childbirth is body horror. I've always said
yes.
So.
Oh dear God, yes. And then you get this like purple potato thing coming out. I know Vince just went through this, but you get this like purple potato, and you're just like, that's what? Can you put it back in? Is it supposed to bake longer? Like, what is going on? Like, this is, and you watch a movie like Smile, you're like, oh yeah, that person that wrote that movie, that's a parent. So anyhow.
They just Lion King him up over the skirt too. They just like,
yeah. You're like, oh. I think a piece dripped off of him. Like,
yeah,
what
right.
is? I love too when they're, and no hate, but I love too when they're like, do you want to keep the placenta? And I'm like, why would I want to keep the placenta? And they're like, well, some people eat it. I'm like, what? Yeah. So I'll stick with Dan O'Bannon in the cold hot dogs.
Yeah.
But yeah. So on that, I'm sure my son, who's 12 now, enjoyed that I said that. I don't know if he's around, but
he'll see it on YouTube later.
Yeah, that's right. 10 years from now.
Yep.
Yeah. His
agent's going to call you.
Yeah. He'll be in college, in a dorm somewhere, and they'll be like, dude, is this you? And then his nickname will be Scrotum for the rest of his life. Like, that's fantastic. Yeah. I don't know. College. I look forward to it. But anyhow, okay. So any other questions? Anything? Anyone? No.
A lot of writers find pitch decks scary. What is something you've learned about pitch decks you'd like to share with them while they're getting anxious?
So if you have that's a great question. Pitch decks, right? So when I first started out, I was fortunate enough, I asked an A-list writer, Brian Nelson, to teach me. He's no relation, but I asked him to teach me how to write. And he wrote 30 Days of Night, Hard Candy, Devil, Da Vinci's Demons, Night Flyers, right? Awesome human being. Very generous, great guy. So he taught me how to write, and then he also taught me like how to do pitch decks. I had another like A-list producer friend. Like, it's interesting to hear what their different takes on what's going to work for film and television. Your pitch deck should always be the background, the page, the wallpaper should be the images and the vision that you have. That's the tone. It doesn't have to be. It can be anything because it's not for public consumption. It can be a still from a movie, right? Like for. I have possibly the next movie I'm doing is called The Entity, and I use the screenshot of the end of Prisoners, right? One of the best endings to any movie, right? You have Jake Gyllenhaal standing out there, and you have the floodlights for the crime scene, and you have the crime scene text, giving that Seven feel, right? That vibe, that's setting the tone. And then one of the next slides for the wallpaper, I have. There's a photographer, a British photographer that I really like, and he takes pictures of kind of empty spaces, and those are phenomenal, again, to set tone. Now, I know that too many people litter pitch decks with a bajillion images and a bajillion shots of the actors that they think, like, oh, this character is like a Michael Shannon, Josh... Thanos guy, right? Like, this is who this character should be. That's too much. Like, no one's so first of all, generally in Hollywood, anyone that's going to be able to green light something for you is going to look at the first page, and that's pretty much it. And that's where you get the term tearaway, right? Like the first page of your script, the first page of your pitch deck, the first page of whatever, they're going to rip it off, and they might take that with them. Rarely do you have someone, and I'm talking like as first timers, right? Like rarely are you going to have someone that's going to give credibility to you and like go through your whole pitch deck. But that being said, it does happen. Keep your page count to 5 or less. And you have to, again, it goes back to script writing, establish your voice. What are you saying? Just like your screenplay, they have to be able to read in just a few sentences like, oh, you have a clear voice. You actually have something to say. This is like a unique, interesting voice. So log line on the first page, all the key character players, it doesn't really matter, again, if it's your first timer, right? It doesn't matter who you're, the director or writer, it's all you anyhow, right? Unless you have like a name producer, you can put who the name producer is on there. But really, that's your calling card. Doesn't matter. You're not going to have anybody. We didn't have anybody, just me and a couple of producers. And then your second page is going to be, you can either fluctuate between the director's statement if you're saying like, I really need to make this movie because it's about domestic abuse, but in the form of a werewolf movie, right? And say why. Or you give a synopsis of the film, right? But either or should have your clear, unique voice in it. And then a lot of people argue that the last page should be a comp page. So you take what movies are comparable to yours, and they don't have to be exactly like yours. Again, if it's a werewolf movie that's an allegory for domestic abuse, you don't have to have the couple of werewolf movies that came out last year, right, as comps. You can, but it's more like, for my vision, these are the films that I see at this price point for this budget, and this is how well they did and performed. What you're saying is, take a chance on me based on what I said, and this is what I see based on the budget that you give me, how this will perform. And that's really, you're kind of trying to sell that, right? So for us, we use The Ritual, right? I think that was like a $500,000 budget, and they ended up, Netflix bought that movie for $2 million. I believe we used It Follows. I can't remember what else we used, but a lot of low budget indie horror, and there's plenty of them out there, that has performed really well. So generally you want to use those as your comps, right? Nothing crazy. You don't want to do like Paranormal Activity and the Blair Witch Project unless you're doing a found footage, right? So it has to be in the same subgenre, or same genre, but don't have it like too far out from what you're doing. Outside of that, I don't think you have to have, like, again, stay away from having a ton of images in there, right? That was a thing, but not recently. People are not investing right now. People don't, because they're not investing, they have even less time because everyone's frantic and they're looking for stuff. So there's also a thing called a one-pager, and that's where you consolidate everything into one page and there's no imagery. So your log line, so who you are, log line, synopsis, how you would do this, who your team is, all on one page, right? That's kind of your elevator pitch in a document. A lot of people are like, you need a page out of those 5 pages. It should be who your team is. Unless you have a name on there, unless you have like a really awesome DP that's a recognizable DP, or you have a real recognizable producer, maybe you could throw it in there. Right. Another page is typically what productions have you worked on in any capacity in the past, and you put those the posters on there, right? So here are the posters of the films that your team has worked on before. Now, there are a lot of people that worked as, like, you might have a wardrobe person that worked on The Walking Dead. Great. Now you have The Walking Dead that you can put up there, right? You might have a DP that was an AC on, The Last of Us. Great. Last of Us, throw that up there, right? But anything you can throw on there that kind of gives you more credibility, do that. And now that I'm talking about credibility, one thing I caution against is I get a lot of, in my FYP, I get a lot of producers and executives and everyone else giving advice. Like, make sure your script has this. Oh, be sure that your pitch deck is this, or whatever. I would caution you against those content creators. Make sure that before you take their advice, because they all sound like they know what they're talking about, go to their page, look at their name, go to IMDb, and check out their credits, right? Because a lot of people they sound so credible, but then it turns out they've done nothing. And you're like, well, what? Wait, what? So be very, very careful, right? So I think if you have somebody that's credible, generally they're not saying it every day, right? Like that's just not a thing.
Listen, they don't have time to tweet at you because they're writing in theory. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
film Twitter was a time. It was
Yeah.
a time of scams, and it was, I'm happy kind of it's gone.
Right.
I'm always telling people just follow the indie filmmakers because, like,
Yeah.
sometimes they're going to drop gems. That's where you're going to see, like, a pitch deck for their project and be like, oh, you're going to find out what a shot list is because you're listening and you're in the space. And
Yeah.
you see them do interviews. And again, that's watching filmmakers do interviews is where you learn a lot of the shit because they get to say it without people breathing on their necks. And so they're just like, oh, yeah, no, producers suck. Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
the studio wouldn't let me have a brown lead. These
Yeah.
are conversations you wanna hear for yourself from the people who lived it. So, yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Like I think, and it's, and I think what you're saying to, again, piggyback what you're saying, it's a lot of times you get a director or producer or somebody that's been so burned by a studio or an exec and they've let it sat there for a year or two and then they finally say like, this is what happened. And you're like, oh shit, that sucks. Right. But at the same time, I know that I've had a lot of bad experiences with executives in studios. I also am very cautious about saying that stuff. Like I will say it at some point, but you have to be careful you don't get in trouble too, right? Because there's a lot of ego out there, and I think that's the biggest problem you're going to face in dealing. If you can avoid dealing with the studio, do it because you're gonna. I know so many executives I worked with. There's a lot of great executives, and the ones that I'm friends with are fantastic, and I'm friends with them for a reason. But there are a lot of executives out there that do not give a shit about film, right? They got their degree at an Ivy League, and they couldn't get a job at, Goldman Sachs or whatever. And their friend's like, hey, I'm working at, this studio, or I'm working at this agency or whatever, come on over. And then next thing you know, they're an agent or they're an executive or whatever. And all they see is like, how do we monetize this? How do we get a cash grab? Right. And that's why you have trailers that give away all of the story right away. And that's why you have remake after remake or IP that's being used over and over again, or you have video games that are being, turned into features and not very well, because you have people that just don't know film and they could care less, right? When you talk to them, it's clear. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be somebody on Letterboxd, but when you talk to some of these, I had a conversation with the head of I don't know if I should say this. Fuck it. So I have a relationship. I was working with this executive at a studio that cranks out horror films. Not all horror film, so it's not Blumhouse, but it was a studio that kicks out a lot of horror films. And they said to me, what horror film doesn't show the main character in the first 5 minutes? Like, what are you doing with the script? I went through 5 pages and I don't see the main character. And it's like, have you seen a horror movie?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? Or I've had executives at studios recently tell me like, well, horror movies just don't take place in the wintertime. Like, you're a unique thing because there's just aren't, it's hard to wrap our head around the fact that your horror movie takes place in the winter because they just don't happen. And immediately my brain is like, so you've never seen The Thing, like the first one or the remake?
Black
or
Christmas.
Black Christmas, or
All three of them.
Yeah, exactly. Like
30 Days of Night.
Gremlins.
Yeah.
30 Days of Night, exactly. Like you're telling, like there's movies from the 60s that take, how many Argento movies took place in kind of the wintertime, kind of, right? But the idea that you have a high-powered exec saying that is just like, they clearly don't. It's almost like they have a disdain for film. And, and then there's this other thing that it bothers me to no end. And I think it bothers me because I'm a horror fan. but the overwhelming feeling in Hollywood is that horror is not a genre to be applauded, right? Like we saw, like why was it that we're all crossing our fingers for Sinners to do well last year? It was clearly the best film of last year, right? And we're all like, oh man, I hope it gets nominated. Oh man, I hope it wins something. Give me a break. Like some of the like Hollywood shits on horror because they feel like it's a poor man's medium. And it's just like, what are you talking about, right? Some of the best movies ever are horror movies since the beginning of film, right? And I don't know where this arrogance comes from. I don't know where this, like, it just, the idea that for a movie to be good, it has to be this gut-wrenching exploration of human boringness, to me, sucks, right? Like that's, so you see a ton of movies get greenlit in Hollywood that are just something that none of us would ever want to watch, right? And I would argue that those movies, why is it that those movies that are supposed to be the best, right, are only profitable if they get nominated for Academy Award, and not even then, right? Like they're banking on the fact that they're going to get nominated for Academy Award, and then people will go to the theaters to see it when they re-release them in theaters. Whereas horror, oh, what do you know? The number one genre for return on investment. Wonder why that is. And, you know, so that's my complaint for the night. But I'll get off the soapbox. I think our genre kicks ass. I think Hollywood is starting to get that. And I really worry for our genre when Hollywood is like, okay, superhero films are failing. Let's kick out as many horror films as we can now, right? How many films are in production right now by studios that are horror films that I hope for the best, but I'm just preparing myself for the worst. Like, I really hope these $100 million, $20 million, $40 million horror movies are awesome. But I think Hollywood is like, oh, people are stupid. We'll just, well, there's money in horror. Let's just make a bunch of horror. Well, what is it that you like about horror? I don't, but let's make them. Right? So, we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to have like our golden moment in horror. It's just be prepared for a lot of that horror to take place. Like, oh, this was this folklore horror that takes place in Arkansas was shot in Finland, or here this is a true American horror story, but we shot it in Ireland, right? I think we're gonna get a lot of that. So, yeah, but again, more reason to go shoot your movie right now in America, get it done. And if it's good, right, it just has to be good. Just make sure it's good. That's all. And then we'll all love it and support it, right? Like, it seems so simple. I know it's a gigantic, ginormous task, but again, Dan O'Bannon, couch, cold hot dogs. And I don't think that's a metaphor for anything. I'm just saying you're one Dan O'Bannon away from being the guy who wrote Alien.
All right, I love that. Anyone else? No, not hearing any questions there. So Morley, you want us to close out? Last words.
Last words.
Final sign off. Yeah.
Final sign off. Yeah. I think. Again, if you're a horror fan, it's because you're smart and you are taking control of what you want to allow and what you are allowing your emotions to see at that moment. It's like a good release, and that's why we like horror, and that's why we take chances on things, and that's why I don't think anything we watch, even if we don't like it overall, is something that says something a lot about our community. Essentially what I'm trying to say in a lot of words is we're all really smart, and we wouldn't like horror if we weren't, right? So that's why I think we're a great community, and I think we have the best genre of film out there. So don't just watch it, go make it.
I agree. I love this community. That's why we're here. I was glad to hear that you have good things to say about Tubi, because that's probably the streaming service I watch the most. So I just anecdotally, I was glad to hear that they have treated indie films well.
Yes, I think Tubi gets a bad rep. I know it's owned by Fox, but because it's owned by Fox, it serves the independent filmmaker really well. Because I think it's insane to me that we had this moment in time where it was like, we have all these tech bros investing in streamers because they're just going to survive off the number of subscribers, when you know very well statistically that's just not possible, right? Like, there's no way a streamer is going to make money. In order to make money, they're going to have to charge a good $1 jillion for your subscription, right? And what do you know? We brought commercials back. Well, you should have never taken them away, because that's what pays the bills, right? Like, and that's why Tubi is very profitable for independent filmmakers, is because if you can get, 4 or 5 ads on your film, you're going to make some money, right? And Tubi gives back that money. They're not screwing people over, right? As far as the platform goes, I think Amazon runs a pretty close second, especially their AVOD, and I think AVOD is for a lot of us at our age, it's like, oh yeah, I remember commercials. So this is when I get up and go to the bathroom or go get something to eat, or go scroll Instagram, right? But that's what's going to save film, right? It's not. I know everyone's like, oh, theatrical windows and things like that. Yeah, maybe to a certain extent, but really for us independent filmmaking, Tubi is a great channel, great platform.
I still play the bathroom game with Tubi commercials.
Yeah,
Gonna make it in a minute and a half. All right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, to be fair though, yeah, right. A minute and a half. Like when you see the 3-minute one, you're like, oh fuck.
Yep.
And you're also like, because it's the commercials during film. You're like, well, this isn't the right spot to do a commercial. Like what? Like what? Well, okay, but whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like take it. It's free. So. Yeah, Tubi all the way.
All right. On that note, I will read us out of here. So that wraps up our very first session of Under the Knife. So thank you, Morley, for being here. And on behalf of the entire Dread broadcast community, putting together an itinerary like this is one thing, but the vulnerability you showed tonight was another. Opening up about your process is helpful, but sharing the personal life events was great to hear. So the why behind the stories you tell is what truly brings this to life for the rest of us. I appreciate you being so open about that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, and I also want to say thank you to the panel. So I'll just go next to me and work my way through. Vince from Dread Alert, thank you for being here. Sheree, it was great to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Rich, Jerry, thank you guys for hanging out on this.
Thank you for having us. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and we will be back next month with another Under the Knife, different special guest, and we'll let you know more about that when it's time. But for now, thank you for being here. Morley, again, thank you for your knowledge in this area. Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you all.